Guys, thank you very much for coming. So we wanted to sort of put your partnership to the test and work out what's so great about being in a partnership. What are the ups and what are the downs? But if we start just from the very basics, why did you choose to go into this together? Why not go off on your own and have a food adventure? Henry, do you want to start? Or?
Do you want to start?
Who normally starts in your partnership?
There are no rules on who normally starts.
I'll tell you how it happened, and then we could maybe start at the why. So we both sat down and said, what businesses would we like to do? We knew we were a kind of a Bain & Company, and we knew it was the second best job you could have. And what we were trying to work out was what was the best thing we could do. And I think Henry came around to my house, and we both had 5 ideas, and this was one of the 5 ideas we did independently. This was the one that we...
And you started
Casinos was one of the other ones.
Oh, really?
Didn't do
and
casinos.
you started out with very low ambitions to make the kind of fast food that God would make.
Yeah.
Was your basic idea.
John's line was McDonald's in heaven. As we started out. I think it's interesting. I think that, as with all relationships in life, it's not completely conscious decision. We'd worked a lot together, we'd travelled a lot, and we'd talked about, actually more than any of the other ideas, we'd talked about doing fast food because we were eating crap.
Lots of it. Yeah.
We were eating a lot of bad food and delicious Kentucky Fried Chicken on the road, but then feeling a bit bad about it. And so we kind of, fell into it. And then I talked to John, I was out in Japan, I said, I really think we should do this. And he said, yeah, I think we should. And we did it. So there's the guys from Innocent, who are friends of ours, tell this story about, they sat down and they made a list of all of the sectors where they thought the lead brand wasn't particularly strong, and they did this rational calculation and decided to do smoothies. And I think that you always, in any of these situations, you tell yourself the rational story, but there's also just a strong sense of partnership, sharing of values, sense of common purpose.
I think that's right. A lot of people, I know the Innocent guys were very rational about it. They're very, but Richard slightly less so, but Adam and John are very rational people. I think we actually went into this with our heart, and we went into it slightly naively saying, what business would we like to be in every day as a partnership? On the partnership point, I think that what we've discovered is that our partnership is visible, but there are many people in business who you think are sole lone wolves, but actually do work in partnership.
So partnership behind
Warren
the scenes.
Buffett has Charlie Munger. You don't hear Charlie Munger doing many interviews, but there is absolutely that partnership. Richard Branson, in every single one of his businesses, has partners. And I think that the perception that partnership is a rare thing, I think we look at Darwin, we think that the conclusion from Darwin is that species who within themselves compete succeed. And it's clear now that he meant that species like ants who collaborate within the partnership, within the ecosystem, succeed. And that's why we're very conscious of the value of the partnership, really. And
do you specialise then? Do you have your own, is one of you really good at talking to the accountant and the other one always goes to meet the marketing people? Or, how do you split yourselves?
When we worked together at Bain, the consultancy, and we did various psychological profiles, and all the psychological profiles we've ever had, we've been this close. But when we're together, I think in any partnership, it's relative. And so John's kind of absolute obsession every day is the customer. He spends his life just thinking about, from a customer point of view, how do I do it? And then how do I make the system simple enough so I can deliver that consistently? I probably think more day to day about growth, strategy, properties, those more business sides of things. But having said that, until 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we were the other way around. So we started off with me doing ops and food and John doing the other stuff. And then to freshen it up recently, we flipped completely.
We now, apart from the brand bit, which I've retained, putting that aside, we now do everything we did when we started, we now do exactly the opposite. For whatever reason. Because we're shit.
One day we'll work out.
We're like, I can do this. Literally, it does get to a point where I'm going to do this now. Yeah, I'll do that now.
You sure we're not still on this Darwin?
analogy? I think we should say. We argue a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
And Katie, who's involved in this somewhere this afternoon, as you know, and Mima, who's Henry's wife, literally often on a Friday night they'll be going, put the phone down, it's okay. and so we have big rows, massive rows, and I think it's wrong to come here and pretend that that doesn't happen.
I mean, are you personality-wise? Do you take on different roles? Is one very good at keeping their head in a crisis? I mean, I know you've talked, Henry, in the past about when Lehman went bust and suddenly things looked a little shaky for a few weeks. I mean, did one of you utterly fall apart and the other keeps it together?
No, I think that the most important thing is like the tag team of wrestling, which is you have your highs and your energy at different points. And what is really powerful about the partnership between us is when one of us is just like, oh God, I'm going to give up, I can't do. The other one powers in and says, no, come on, we're going to do this. I think the other thing that we do that has kept the kind of intensity within Leon is we're constantly reminding each other of what we set out to start to do. So I think when you're in a business, one of the problems that you can have, and everyone here would have experienced this, is looking at other things you could do, bolt-ons,
Yes, we were just talking about that, about the number of entrepreneurs I spoke to said the most important thing they learned early on was we were doing too much, and then scale back.
And just forcing us to, this idea, John's phrase of McDonald's in heaven, forcing ourselves to come back, and every time we've put the energy and the power into that idea, we've made Leon better.
And I would say one thing, which is, I read a book by Ray Kroc, who started McDonald's, and what was clear is that if Daddy, and we see this in our business, if people are constantly looking to see if Daddy and Daddy are getting on, and
we could now get married, of course.
We could actually, heterosexual same-sex marriage. And
although you just mentioned your partners already.
Exactly, the Ray Kroc thing is interesting because it's very easy in a lot of businesses to create two tribes. So if you have functional divisions to encourage your people to sort of create slightly different cultures. We do create slightly different cultures in our teams. And even if it's 1 degree difference and you're going very fast, it can actually end up being divergent. And I think you have to make sure that you are constantly reminding people that despite any differences they see, Daddy and Daddy love each other very much.
Very important. Very important. And with just 1 minute left to go, back to the really important question of exactly who makes the best food.
Between us?
Within the partnership, yes.
Oh, Henry.
Because I know, because you're both on the
Henry, like by a mile.
Oh, really?
I mean, Henry, like is a proper chef. Because both your names
appear on the cookbooks.
No, because I actually want to
I do the easy stuff.
I was a chef. So I was a chef. I was a chef in a Michelin-star restaurant. Comedy chef. I was a bit too messy.
And then you were a consultant.
And then I was a journalist. And then we were consultants together. And John was at P&G. But John has the most amazing palate. So he will sit what he does in the food meetings. He knows exactly when something doesn't taste right and exactly when what it needs to taste like. So actually, I think in some ways, because he hasn't had the training, he's not held back by, I'm always thinking about, okay, how can I do that? What are the barriers? What can I do? How can I do that? Whereas he has these very strong visions of a flavour he wants to create and will kind of power forward until he achieves that.
John, you must never be invited to dinner parties because that sounds like an incredibly useful skill in a restaurant business and deeply irritating when you're invited to people's houses.
I like most food.
It's a bit salty.
Wrong meeting.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
The clock is flashing.
The clock is flashing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the